Hi, I'm Anna and welcome back again for another tutorial in After Effects. Today I want to focus on 3D space and adding a camera to our composition. I've chosen an image of the Sydney skyline and I have dissected it in pieces, so foreground, midground and background in Photoshop and created like individual layers, and all those layers will now be imported into After Effects, and we're going to work with those, putting them in 3D space and adding a camera so it actually zooms. You'll see in a minute anyway. It's not. It's a really handy technique to learn and to know how to use a camera. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Okay, so this is the image that we're going to start with. It is Sydney, the skyline of Sydney. To the right, which we can't see, is the Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. This vantage point is from Lady Macquarie's chair. Anyway, this is our starting image. Now what we've done, or what I've done, is I have dissected this image, and as you can see, the sky has been removed. The water has been removed, and what I needed to do is I needed to clone just a little bit of the buildings, as you can see here. I'll turn off that. Now, this was necessary to do, and it will become evident as the tutorial goes on, because we'll be using the camera in After Effects. So there was just that little bit of shortfall or misalignment. So I needed to clone it. And the thing is, when you do this type of thing in After Effects, you generally have to clone some part of the image, but it will become evident as the tutorial moves along. So that is our starting image. So what we do now is label. Yes, of course, we got to label. So these are the buildings. This is the, actually, I'm going to merge this down, and that now becomes one layer. Then we have the trees, and then we have the foreground. So now we shall save that. And we will bring it into After Effects. Okay, so now we've left Photoshop and we're into After Effects. So what we need to do is right-click, import file. And we're going to import the file that we saved in Photoshop. So that is here. Now we want to import it as editable layer styles, and that now has brought in our 3 layers. So and it actually forms a composition as well. So what I like to do is pop that in first, just to give me a guide. So transform, fit to comp, right? So that now gives me a guide as to where I need to put the layers, and then I can just delete this. So the foreground will go here. The trees will go here. We'll delete them, reduce them, sorry. And the buildings, because they're at the back, they need to go at the bottom of the stack. So let's bring that up and reduce it. So that's just about in position. So now we can just go ahead and delete that layer that was the guide and just tidy things up a little bit here. So so now that we've got our layers in position, we need to add the water and the sky. So this here is the sky, and we will put that at the bottom of the stack because that's obviously the furthest thing away. So let's enlarge it and bring it up a little bit. And then we have our water. So we bring that in and we put that just here, I think. Should be fine. So let's enlarge it and we'll swash it down a touch so we can... Right, so the colour of that water is pretty horrid at the moment, but we'll fix that. So this is the basic setup now for our composition. So I'm just going to go ahead and save. And yeah, so I'll just change the colour of this water. It's bothering me. Levels, turquoise water. And because it's a cloudy day and there's a storm coming, I think the water needs to be sort of towards the grey, a greyish colour, probably even desaturated, hue saturation, water. Okay, I think that's a fairly realistic colour for Sydney Harbour on a dull day. Okay. I think we'll also add some levels and some curves perhaps to the buildings. They look a bit too bright. So let's put here levels and drag that into the building and just darken them up a bit. Because this photo was actually taken at just on sunset. And we will need to obviously adjust the foreground as well. So levels. We could have done all this in Photoshop, but by having the sky and the water here gives us a much better representation of what colours we actually need to adjust them to. Let's the sky and the foreground. Let's darken that up a bit. We can always go back and adjust the colours if we don't feel that they're right. And the trees. So this is what it will start. This is our starting image. So now what we will do is convert all these layers into 3D layers. So we press cube here. If you don't see it, just press toggle switches down here and it will appear. So now that we've converted them into 3D, we need to add a camera to activate the zoom that we're going to use. So we right click, new, camera. Now I think probably a 35mm is pretty safe. We could probably go for a wider angle, but let's say 35. So that's okay. So what we'll do now is we're going to change the view on this. So we're going to see it as what we see now, but we're also going to be looking at it from the top. So then we can move the layers accordingly and just to position them for the camera to sort of move through them. So what we need to do now is here we click here, two views horizontal. So one view is the active camera and the other view is the top. Here, this little pink square or rectangle is the camera, and here all are all our layers. So at the moment they're all on one plane. So we need to separate them and put them, make them apart from each other. So what we do, the first one would be the foreground. So we click on that. Now there's a little blue arrow here, which is the Z axis, and you'll see as we hover over, the letter Z appears next to the arrow. So click on that and bring it forward, because that needs to be the most forward thing there. Now as we see from here, it's disappeared, but that's okay, because then we switch to this screen and bring it up. So we bring it into position. We can actually scale it as well. Look, that's taken it a bit too far. Undo, undo. Okay, well, we can go back to that when we're in that view again. At the moment, we just want to concentrate on positioning the layers in the 3D space. The next one would be the water. So let's select the water and bring that probably about here for the moment. Push it up a touch. Next, we need the trees. So they can probably stay where they are. Yeah, I think that's maybe even just a touch back. Oh, that's too far back, because what we've actually done now is put them behind the buildings. We don't want to do that. So let's just leave them here for the moment. Next, select the buildings and push them fairly all the way back. And you've noticed they've disappeared, because what we've done, we've actually pushed them behind the sky. So what we need to do now is select the sky, grab that and push it all the way back. Now you'll notice here it's reduced in size, but it hasn't really. It's just that we've pushed it further back in Z space. So we can just grab these handles here and enlarge the sky. And that way we have it, it's still in the right position. Yes. So these trees appear to be below the water. So let's see what we can do here. The trees are there. Let's change the colours of the trees. I like to change the colours of the layers. It just makes it a little bit easier to differentiate. So obviously let's make that green. So now see, this changes green and this changes green and the bounding box changes green. So it just makes it easier to identify, particularly when you're working with a lot of layers. So we will need to put the trees in front of the water. So let's change the water layer to blue. Right, so we can push the water back a bit. And now let's bring the trees forward. Right, so here we have our basic setup, and we're ready to activate the camera. Before we start the camera, there's just a few things which, because I've pre-done this and I know what to expect, I need to make a few little changes. Now, for example, I need to bring the building position down a little bit. And I would like to create some more trees, just to give it that depth, and you'll see why in a little while. So what we do is click on the tree layer, right click. No, that doesn't work. It's got to be Control Command D, and that will duplicate our layer. So at the moment it's still in the same space as the original layer, but we'll move that in a little while. And let's flip it just to give it a little bit more variety, and let's move it over here and just stretch it out so it fits in the composition. So now let's go back to our top view, because we want to move that layer back a little bit. So here it is here. So grab the blue arrow and just push it back just about there, I'd say. So let's go back to the active camera, and we only want one view, and it has shrunk a little bit, but that's okay because we will just enlarge it again. Another thing which we may want to do is, okay, for example, if you look at the edges of the trees, they're pretty, they don't look natural. So what I want to do is use this feature called Roughen Edges and bring that in to the tree layer. Now here we have a, I'm going to zoom in so we can get a proper look at this. So here we have a whole heap of options. Now what we want to do, I think Spiky was the one that worked well for this type of thing. So select Spiky, and where it says border, let's move that up a little bit. And we're going to do the same for the other layer as well. So what we can do is Control C to copy Roughen Edges, select the other tree layer and Control V. That then copies those same parameters and attributes into the layer. So now, as we can see, there's a jaggedness, a spikiness actually, in those layers, and it just gives it a little bit more of a natural look. I mean, cutting this out in Photoshop would have been just, it's not worth it. It's so labor intensive. So let's bring our buildings back again. So now the tree layers have, you know, it appears that the leaves are, you know, you can see some of the leaves. So that's a quick way of disguising and helping, you know, just giving the appearance of that you've cut it out really well in Photoshop. Okay, so now we're going to activate the camera. So go up here, on this icon here, it says Track Camera Tool. And we'll just go through the controls. So this is the unified camera tool. Let's see what that does. Okay, so that just turns everything around, and it's actually moving everything in 3D space. So for what we want, that's not really appropriate. So let's reset it. Next is the Orbit camera tool. So that just turns things around. So remember before we were looking at things through the top. Well, that's basically what we were looking at. And here's our foreground, two sets of trees, our water, our buildings, and our sky. And this is now turning the whole thing around. Yeah, so you get some interesting situations here. This is looking at it from the bottom now. So yeah, so we could sit here and play with it all day, but we won't. So let's reset it. Then the next one is the X and Y. So this moves things across, down, and up. Right, reset it. So, but what we will be actually using is the Z, because we are moving everything in the Z plane. So let's bring it forward about a second, and let's place some keyframes. Then bring the head right to the end, or even say a second before the end, say 10 seconds. Select the Z, now left click and scroll forward. And keep scrolling until you reach a level that you're happy with. Now, if you recall, back in Photoshop, I needed to clone a little bit of the bottom of the buildings. And the reason being is that if I didn't do that, when we get to this point, there would be this big gap. So by cloning it, avoids that gap. So there we have it. I'm going to do a quick RAM preview render, and let's see what the final output looks like. So here we have it. It's all rendered out, and as you can see here, by adding that extra row of trees, even though it's the same image, we've flipped it and it just looks quite random, and to me it looks quite natural. It has given our composition here a lot more depth and a little bit more realism. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. This is sort of entry-level camera work. It does get, you know, you can make it as complicated and complex as you choose, but once you're aware and are familiar with what its capabilities are, then there's no stopping. You can do whatever you like, basically. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I look forward to catching up with you again. Thank you. See you later. Bye.